VP on the Radiant, uebelst, sorry, I should say VP on the Dire, uebelst on the Radiant, and I'm not alone here. I am joined by Kanaz. How you doing, man? It feeling any better? Worse? Same?
It's about the same. Doing okay. Doing okay.
Alright. Well, okay is decent. Currently we are getting massive map pinging from some of the players in the game, which is mildly annoying. I'm actually going to turn my Dota volume down a little bit, because those pings are really loud. Alright, so, VP uebelst. What is the deal with VP? Why aren't they doing as well as a lot of people assumed when their roster was published?
I just really don't know what you can blame if you want to sit around and just say, well, it's there, you need to get used to playing with each other for a while first. I mean, that certainly seems like a fair thing to say, but at the same time, they're not doing even close to well most of the games they're playing. Just sloppy individual play is also coming out from a lot of the players, so I don't know what's going on with them, if they're just completely not on the same page and it's leading to lots of awkward misplays, or if maybe some of them just aren't in the shape that they once were, because a lot of these players kind of weren't playing for the highest tier of teams, I guess, recently. There are definitely a lot of the better players from whatever their respective teams were, but like Light of Heaven was playing for the Empire that was kind of never winning anything Empire.
Right.
G was for LGD, and they ended up looking particularly underwhelming at the international, and we saw Go Black, who with Quantic couldn't make it through the wildcards. So they were all certainly good teams, but they weren't all the best teams. So I don't know what's going on.
Sure. I mean, these players are all very well known as these sort of incredibly talented players. But yeah, I think that's a good point. They definitely aren't having the easiest time. Definitely, Light of Heaven has come under some criticism. People have been sort of saying maybe he just isn't that into the game as he once was, but they've got rising stars as well in some capacity, or at least one. Resolution, this guy, we talked about him. He's all I could talk about during last season's Star Ladder Finals. I think you guys wanted me to shut up about Resolution by the end, but he really was really strong as the IC Cup team captain, and I do think he's adjusted to the one role very well. Like, he's been playing quite well in that one role, but do you think it suits him as well as mid did, or would you rather see them maybe reshuffle positions a little bit?
I think Resolution's been doing well in the one role, but maybe not as well as he needs to be. He still has a couple habits, I think, that were picked up very obviously from his aggressive play in the mid lane. Sometimes we see him make a little bit questionable plays when he's on that hard carry role, where he goes very aggressive and kind of gets in over his head and ends up not farming as much as he really needs to be for his team. So I think he can definitely do the one role. We've seen him farm and do it well. We've seen him carry games very effectively. He just needs to break, I think, some of the habits he's developed over the time he played in that mid lane.
Yeah, maybe you're right. It's certainly I guess on a Russian team, it's not so bad if you're a very aggressive carry. They kind of expect it by this point with people like Silent and Hvost running around. But yeah, Resolution, I think there is definitely an adjustment period to realizing that you can't always make those huge plays. Depends on the hero. I mean, sometimes Weaver can, but heroes like Anti-Mage or what have you won't be able to do it as easily. So we've talked about the overall shape going into this game a lot, especially of VP, but let's actually dive into the draft. So VP, they have secured that Weaver. They actually use all their reserve time to do so. Actually, was that their... Yeah, so they dig into their reserve time. They pick up Shadow Demon Jakiro, which is a pretty solid support bear to put down that Ice Path. They have Weaver probably for Resolution, would be my guess. But uebelst has a pretty good lineup too. Naga, of course, we saw basically win the last game. What's your take on these drafts so far?
I mean, I don't think there's anything particularly surprising except maybe the Jakiro pickup coming out thus far from either team. And Jakiro is a support that's very powerful with both Shadow Demon and Darkseer, so I could certainly see them going that route very easily as a secondary support. With the Mirana pick, I'm surprised about. Why is Mirana suddenly becoming somewhat common almost? And that's very confusing to me, since I don't remember Mirana getting a buff.
Well, she did get a series of buffs. In 6.78, I believe the changes were... There was another minor Moonlight Shadow buff, I think, but the big buff was to Arrow, because you get the GGWP damage bonus, right? So the scaling damage benefit of Arrow was added in 6.78, I believe.
Oh, okay. And I know they made it so it's a little bit harder to see the arrow, which was also like
Yeah,
a
that's
sort
true.
of indirect buff, but it was more like trying to make it similar to Dota 1.
Dota 1, yeah.
So I guess all that adds up and makes Mirana a more legitimate choice, but I think she's still a little awkward for what most teams end up kind of trying to do with her.
Right, right.
We don't always see as much, I think, aggression out of the Mirana picks as maybe we need to, because Mirana doesn't really carry that hard into the late game by comparison to a lot of common picks. It's
Sure.
not like TI1 where Mirana was kind of like a carry, and we
Right.
always saw her go into like Manta and then MKB and carry
Right.
games. Now there are lots of better options that do, more work with less farm.
Yeah. I think the popularity of Mirana is almost a byproduct of the popularity of Naga Siren. When you have this Naga who's able to have two separate spells that guarantee somebody's going to sit in the same place for like 5 seconds or more, suddenly Mirana, has this very chancy spell that, dang, it sure would be great if somebody could be in the same place for 5 seconds or more for me to land the spell. Maybe that is the big motivator behind the rise of Mirana picks. And she is usually running a multi-core lineup, so it's not like you're expecting her to pull all the auto-attack freight. But it's true that in this case, we do see uebelst with kind of a paucity of... They don't have that many other auto-attack sources. I mean, Nature's Prophet is definitely capable of suddenly auto-attacking for a lot of damage, and Mirana is to some extent capable of auto-attacking for a lot of damage, but Enigma certainly doesn't, and overall, I do think VP have a little more muscle in their lineup, although it has to be said, like, Weaver is their only real auto-attack threat as well, so... any other thoughts about this draft, especially about these last picks of the Storm Spirit and the Enigma?
I think Storm is a very powerful pick and makes sense for the kind of aggression that VP like to throw out during the game. They were looking for a mid-hero that could go aggressive. Obviously, Puck was already picked up on the other side. So Storm Spirit is a fine pickup, I think, in this particular situation. We'll see if he's a little more successful this game than the last game we saw with Storm against the Puck, where it felt like Puck really got ahead of the Storm early.
Yeah.
But the Enigma pick, I don't really know why they went with that in particular.
Well,
I guess maybe they're going to try and force team fights and have Nature's Prophet try and split push while they're doing that.
maybe.
And then if the fight comes, Nature's Prophet comes into the fight with the teleport. That could be their plan, but I don't know if I love that plan against the Darkseer Jakiro combo,
Yeah.
realistically.
Maybe they just really want to... They were so worried about the team fight capacity of VP with, as you mentioned, the vacuum into Ice Path, disruption into Ice Path, vacuum, Ice Path, Storm Spirit just jumps on you and does a ton of damage. Maybe they feel that they were so disadvantaged in the 5v5 that they wanted that big... Oh, we land this ultimate and we can actually win a team fight off the back of it. So maybe that's the role that the Enigma is going to play. Either way, it just to introduce the teams, we will have Poss on the Enigma. More likely than not, we'll see him going up into the jungle. That'll leave a tri-lane composed of RMN on the Mirana, supported by Alex on the Naga Siren, and... just supported by Alex on the Naga Siren. Then Blue Banana might be going up into the off lane to start out with as Nature's Prophet. I think that's what it looks like here, especially if Poss is going to hog the jungle. And then that will just leave Exist to take the mid lane as Puck, our second Puck vs. Storm matchup in a row.
Yeah, and for VP, we're going to have them all currently setting up shop in the Radiant Jungle. That's going to be Light of Heaven playing the Weaver. Go Block on the Shadow Demon. Resolution's currently on the Darkseer. G on Storm Spirit, and finally NS on the Jakiro. So it looks like Light of Heaven might actually be taking over the 1 role in this game.
Interesting. Could this be a role switch? What do you think about this?
I think it's certainly possible, and we know Light of Heaven was a very experienced carry player prior to his time with Navi, where he transitioned to that offlane role.
Right.
He was a carry player and was very good at it, so maybe this will end up working out better. And if we see Resolution on this offlane role instead of the carry role, his aggressive tendencies aren't really going to hurt necessarily his team as badly as maybe they were before. So it might end up working out well for them.
Yeah, I mean, if this is a more permanent thing and not just an experiment, I think it could definitely work for VP. I mean, we said that Light of Heaven has come in for a lot of criticism lately, but you have to put that into context. Light of Heaven is possibly the most decorated in terms of tournament results player of Dota of all time. Not necessarily of Dota 2, but of Dota overall as a scene. Light of Heaven is one of, if not the greatest all-time players. So Obviously, everybody is really, really wishing that he's able to, with this all-star team at VP, really find his footing and do extremely well. So, Light of Heaven, as you mentioned, in the one role, he'll be going up in basically a... I want to call it a try versus try situation, but it's really not. Actually, Ice Path already being thrown out. RMN taking a lot of harassment to start out with on Mirana. He has these two sets of tangos, but not that many items other than that. And in this... how much will Alex really be able to get done here, and how much will Poss be able to tip the scales? Or is Mirana just going to end up being super pressured?
Yeah, I don't really know. I feel like Mirana is going to be pressured pretty heavily here, and I just don't know about this Enigma pick, realistically. If it's going to end up working out for them.
They have blocked, like, an astonishing amount. Like, this camp's blocked, Goblek body blocked this camp, I think.
Yeah, and when you have the Enigma on the other team, you know he's going to be jungling, and they go for that Goblek in trouble,
There's
though.
the arrow. The net has hit, so Goblek taking a bit of damage. Level 1 Malefice comes in. Now keep in mind, this is 3 stuns, but a nice defensive disruption. There's the Ice Path. Goblek still probably falls. Will he get first blooded? Yes, the first blood does go to uebelst, but at the cost of Mirana going down. So 1 for 1. RMN gets a first blood, immediately gets dropped, but he didn't have that much in the way of unreliable gold anyway, so... maybe not so bad. He didn't lose any of the gold he got from the first blood, at least. Arrow. Very speculative. Just narrowly misses Light of Heaven. Yeah, what does Poss do here to get in this game?
Well, I think that's a very good gank for him to be able to get off, and really it was just Goblek being very, very far out of position. I don't think there was a ton of reason for him to try and walk that way around the tree line there, instead of just going along the outside, which is much, much safer. But, he needs to get those levels up fast. Enigma is a hero that jungles very, very quickly, very efficiently. But until he gets some levels, he can't really do too much. The level 1 Malefice typically isn't going to do a lot of anything.
Right.
It happened to work out there because he was already chain stunned so effectively.
Yeah. And up in the middle lane, G currently using a DD rune. He has a tiny bit of an advantage in this lane over Puck so far. Oh, I totally missed a kill on the bottom. Mirana, actually. Light of Heaven diving very far in and showing a very strong facility with this hero, as was mentioned by the stats guy just a second ago. He's 6-2 lifetime, or lifetime in Dota 2 with this hero, and I didn't quite catch, how did that dive pan out? Did they start with another Ice Path, or?
Yeah, it was an Ice Path into... or a disruption to Ice Path and Dual Breath, and they just dealt some damage. Armin tried to leap over the trees to get away, but Light of Heaven chased him down with the Shikuchi.
Right. Yeah, honestly, it's a great start for VP, at least in the try. Now, the mid, Exist is doing just fine here. It was mentioned, Puck has a 5 for 3 record. Not that surprising, as we saw in the last game. Puck can really just give Storm Spirit conniptions with the repositioning ability and just slamming that Waning Rift, possibly max rank, just right onto Storm Spirit. Interesting, he's actually gone a more balanced build, 2-2 here. 2 points in Illusory Orb 2 and Waning Rift. Sometimes we see Pucks choosing to max the Waning Rift a little bit earlier, particularly against Storm, but I think this can be justified as well. And it looks like Poss is leveling also, so they're getting levels to some extent. They're getting some farm. Where do you think uebelst can start being a little more dynamic rather than just reacting to VP?
I'm really not sure what their strategy is for sort of taking control of the game with this lineup.
Right.
It's kind of... I think it's pretty awkward. They're going to have to set up, I think, team fights with the Naga song into the Black Hole. That's a long, long cooldown, and I don't really see a ton of reason for VP to just get in that position. If they can sort of dodge or bait those spells out, then uebelst don't really have much beyond that as it stands right now.
Do you think VP came away with a better draft here?
Yeah, I really like VP's draft by comparison to what uebelst are running. I think it has a more obvious game plan, I guess. Maybe it's just I'm not catching on to what uebelst want to do, but VP, they can control their lanes a little bit better, and I just see them kind of starting to put a lot of pressure all over
Exist.
the map.
He already is throwing out the Waning Rift. There's the Nature's Prophet ultimate, and they pick him off. Exist with another auto attack there, and all of a sudden they have 4 players here. Maybe this is the plan. Kills into early push. They've got Naga. They've got the Nature's Prophet Treants. They have the Eidolons from Enigma, and this tower is dropping precipitously. It's already down about to a third of its health. Will VP even bother to fortify this? They may not. It looks like they're going to give it up. It's a kill. Meanwhile, Mirana gets dropped actually very, very far up in the bottom lanes. That's yet another kill for Light of Heaven. Improves to 2-0-1. but a tower and a kill on Storm Spear is the trade. How big is the pushing threat from uebelst? Could you see them going high ground earlier than VP are ready to deal with it?
They could certainly try, but they have heroes like Jakiro and Darkseer on the side of VP, and both of those are pretty good turtling heroes. They have long range abilities. Even Shadow Demon with the Shadow Poison can turtle pretty well.
Sure.
Once they get some levels up on this, I don't know if it's going to be that easy of a push unless VP try and force the issue a little too much outside of their base, end up getting caught in a weird position.
Sure. Goblek and NS, this could be a weird position. Here's the Malefice. Nice Ice Path getting thrown out by NS in response. He does the Dual Breath as well. He's already dropped very low, though. It's an easy pickup. It's a kill for Puck. Actually, that's the second kill for Puck. And nice kills again. You just mentioned positioning, and VP really seeking to counter ward aggressively, even if that actually ends up with them getting killed. And Midas up for Blue Banana. He's farming up on this Nature's Prophet. They really want to get this push going. I guess my main concern right now lies with Aramed, because he's died 3 times. He has a tier 1 boot. And at this point, we just see him doing things like wandering into the middle lane to throw out arrows and see if they land on G. How do they get Mirana involved in this, or do they write her off?
I don't know if Mirana is necessarily going to be able to get very involved in what's going on in this particular game. I think once she gets level 6 and having that Moonlight Shadow can certainly help with their plan if it is to, in fact, run those sort of ganks into the tower pushes. Moonlight Shadow is a very effective skill for that. But with how this lane has been going for her, making her a big factor in terms of teamfight presence is not really going to be a reasonable expectation in the near future.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Midas, Blue Banana, because he did have a lane in which he wasn't really pressured, he wasn't stuck in an off lane against a try, he didn't have to go to the jungle late, he didn't start in the jungle, he just goes straight for that Midas, no boots. So at around, he got it pretty quickly. He's already used it, I think, at least once, maybe even twice. So very well done to him. And that will get Nature's Prophet to be a threat. Maybe Nature's Prophet can make up for the lack of threat that Mirana poses. I was going to say as a postscript to the Mirana thing, they should just go all leap, because that's the legit Mirana build. You just get that big buff for the Treants and the Eidolons, get a little bit of attack speed, a little bit of move speed. Mirana make pushing machine, Necro Rush. What do you think about that?
I think that's crazy, and you sound crazy. That attack speed buff, it's good, but that's really awkward to use. Like, you back off and then jump into the creep wave to try and make the creeps attack faster. I feel like that's a pretty minor thing compared to having Starstorm maxed out.
Alright. Well, she can always max it second. I'm not gonna land those arrows anyway. No, I'm mostly kidding. I do think Leap is underrated, but I don't think RMN is going to go Leap heavy here. Much to my chagrin, because it's so legit and people undervalue it so much. So, I don't know, the game still seems pretty static, and in a static game, I have to say VP are probably more comfortable, because Resolution is already almost at Mechanism. He's only about 800 off, 67 last hits in 9 minutes. Now, some of those are jungle, some of those are Treants, but that's still an awful lot for a Darkseer to have this early, and once they have Mechanism, they could just feel comfortable transitioning to a push. Light of Heaven, of course, Treads and part of his Lincoln Sphere are being built for him, and even decent levels. NS is level 5, almost up to that Macropyre if he wants it. We don't always see Jakiro training it at level 6, but it is pretty frequent. Interesting that he's gone with maxing Dual Breath earlier than Ice Path. What do you think about this?
I think it's better for just damage purposes, and I think that's mostly what they're concerned about when they're trying to burst down this Mirana.
Goblak takes a Waning Rift right to the face. Exist. He has a Dream Coil if he needs it, doesn't need it. DD Rune for Puck. Puck is actually a pretty good auto attacker, so with DD Rune available, if you got that Null Talisman early, you're actually able to bring down something like a Shadow Demon pretty quickly. So a 4-3 kill advantage for uebelst. And Light of Heaven, diving in on RMN. He does have the Sacred Arrow available defensively. The bugs get thrown out. Will he dive further? He decides not to, but he just zones the Mirana out once again. uebelst, when's the push going to come, like, time-wise?
It's hard to say. I think they need to do it soon, though. I would guess that it's probably around 17-ish minutes when they need to really, really start putting this pressure on. Because Light of Heaven's getting a lot of farm down this bottom lane. Resolution's getting a ton of farm in the top lane. And even Storm Spirit is pretty heavily out farming Puck in the mid lane. So if they wait, every minute that they wait and the sort of status...
Vacuum, Storm jumps in on Blue Banana. Nature's Prophet blown up very easily. A very nice vacuum from Resolution, of course. Already up to rank 3 on that because this Darkseer has been leveling like a crazy person. He's already level 10, Midas Nature's Prophet down at 9, mid Storm Spirit at 9. Darkseer's had a great game, but meanwhile, in the bottom lane, uebelst, they try to turn it around. Goblak taking a Starstorm right to the face. Malefice getting thrown out on somebody else, actually. Goblak, they're still chasing him. Exist kills the Jakiro already. He's going to go for a double. Goblak with the magic stick, and they peel off. Alex throws out the Riptide. It's not enough. They kill Jakiro, but Jakiro for Nature's Prophet ends up being the trade. Goblak with excellently used magic stick timing, and yeah, I think like you said, Kanaz, the status quo is not going to serve them for very long. The nice thing is uebelst look like they know that. They seem to want to transition into a push if they can. Here's Poss with his Eidolons. They've got creeps too. Bugs are thrown out. The Swarm comes out from Light of Heaven. He may try to seek a deny here. Maybe VP could even go for a fight. Will G re-enter? That's really the main thing. They're pushing. They have the second set of Eidolons already up. RMN, Exist, Poss. They want to really zone Light of Heaven back from this tower. A deny here would be very bad for their actual ability to just ramp up their farm. There's the Shadow Poisons. VP now in full turtle mode, you mentioned. Extra damage from NS if he decides to throw out that dual breath to clear a wave. And Light of Heaven just, I don't know. Yeah, it looks like uebelst's peeling off. That's troublesome. I guess they didn't have Nature's Prophet for it, but that was a completely stymied push.
Yeah, Prophet wasn't there, but his treants were.
Right, that's true.
Which is most of what his pushing potential is going to be in this phase of the game anyways. And yeah, I don't know what uebelst's lineup is going to do against VPs as the game goes on. If their plan was to push, I think VP have an amazing turtling lineup with their particular set of heroes. And again, Weaver is just farming down this bottom lane, and Resolution is getting big farm up in the top lane. He's coming down the bottom lane now, but he has Arcane Boots, Mech, and Soul Ring at like 12 minutes.
Yeah. Mech, of course, being delivered to Enigma as well, but Enigma, a sort of classic jungle farmer, it's not tremendously surprising that he would have this, whereas Darkseer has done very well for himself. Of course, it was a low-pressure lane. I mean, I agree with you, Kanaz, and we've seen uebelst have not the greatest drafts before. Sometimes they get good drafts. I feel that Alex maybe is a little less experienced than somebody like Goblak, who's almost legendary for his drafting prowess. So maybe they drafted themselves into a corner, but I don't want to count uebelst out just yet. They've got a 4-0-1 puck, and they've got an Enigma that can really turn games on a dime. And here's Moonlight Shadow as well. They're going to walk right over the Sentry Ward, but Goblak's going to walk right into it. He takes an arrow to the face. He's doing a lot of damage. Oh, he actually self-disrupts. They had a nice ice path, so they're going to limit the damage to just Goblak. That's honestly... Wait, what? How did I miss the Weaver kill? Oh, Nature's Prophet TP'd and Exist landed a perfect full-length Waning Rift and Dreamcoil. So 2 deaths for VP, 1 in the front, 1 in the back, and the sloppy execution could actually end up making the difference where the draft doesn't. 8-4 now for uebelst, and they look to transition into a push.
Yeah, definitely. If they're able to get these kills on Weaver, it's a good thing for them to be able to get it done, because Weaver is kind of the big factor on the side of VP right now. He's the one who's going to eventually be their carry, and if he gets big, it's going to be difficult for uebelst to come back because of how tricksy Weaver is, as well as how much physical damage he can pump out very quickly. At the same time, I think Storm is also a pretty big deal here, and G is doing rather well for himself after getting ganked in that mid lane early. He's not doing as well necessarily as Puck is doing on the kill front, but he can set things up just as well right now, I think. And it's going to come down to a battle between them right now for this mid game dominance, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that the blink for Puck is going to be a big factor in that. But nonetheless, if they get the kill on Blue Banana here, hold him off his Shadow Blade. He tries to do something, but no Shadow Blade is available. The Vac, more damage from G, and that's a great kill. Hold the Prophet off his ability to escape. It costs him about 300 gold there, and just land a kill. Keep trying to ramp up that Star Spirit. Meanwhile, Goblak in trouble again. Defensively disrupts. That might actually be the end of the Dream Coil, but it'll still be an easy kill for Exist with 1 more auto attack. Puck improves to 5-0-2, even as VP begin a siege of the top tier 2 tower. Resolution and G whacking on it. They don't want to leave just yet until they see what sort of defenses can be mustered from uebelst. Here comes Poss. He tries for the Malefice, but G walks away. Exist is here as well. Can they blink forward? No. They actually TP 4 people to this lane, basically without being able to score a kill. I think that means they're going to feel very pressured to actually make something of this via a push. And of course that means that Light of Heaven gets free time in the bottom. It looks like this tower almost uncontested. Here comes Nature's Prophet, pops off a Midas as well as Treants. Going to defend this tower any way he can. Does not get the last hit on the catapult, and Light of Heaven walks away. So VP outmaneuvering uebelst a little bit there, wasting their time. a time that they aren't spending farming. And yeah, I think as you said, Kanaz, they're only about a minute and a half from when you'd expect them to be barreling down all of the tier 2s.
Yeah, and they're not really in a position, I think, to actually go through with it at this point. They've just kind of not really put the pressure on in the other lanes I really was expecting them to be able to. And I guess some of that just comes down to VP's lineup and how effective they are at defending these towers. They're doing a pretty good job. They're losing on the kill score pretty heavily, but almost all of their deaths are actually on Goblack right now.
Sure.
Which is not actually like the most concerning issue. Storm had 1 death early, and that's like it.
Right. Goblack, yeah, you're right. He has every single death of VPs. That's funny. Yeah, it's the 6th highest, as we mentioned a couple times. Resolution was farming very well. He had access to treants, jungle, and a lane that wasn't really that in danger, and so 124 last hits by the 15-minute mark. The 6th best of all time. That is a pretty good Darkseer performance. I really think Resolution is actually like adapted to be at least the last hitting part of his job very well. Meanwhile, RMN, he was digging in. There's the Waning Rift. Dreamcoil as well. He wants G, but Exist is taking a lot of damage. Nice blue banana in the backcourt. They pick off the Storm Spirit. Weaver walks away, but that's not the worst trade. Mirana for a Storm, especially when that Storm is supposed to be snowballing. And G, he's sitting at about where Wadafaka was at this point last time, where he has 1 Oblivion staff, doesn't have the 2nd staff, doesn't have the recipe. Whereas Puck, similar performance to last as well, Exist 5-0-3 with a Blink Dagger and 1.3k. How much of their sort of deficiency can the Puck paper over? Because it looks like they're digging in. They've got the Midas from Mirana already used once or twice. Maybe uebelst feel like they can take this a little later once the Mirana becomes a big threat. Can Puck buy enough time for that?
It's really hard to say. You kind of expect that Puck is going to be able to pretty much buy time, and also the way they're playing right now, where the pressure is often on VP side of the map, will also create some of that space, but I'm still kind of surprised by this Midas pickup by Mirana. I guess it's just to try and get RMN back in the game, and it's one of the better ways of doing that, considering the start RMN really had in this particular game.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It's just hard to say if it's going to end up being exactly what they needed. VP starts to turn the pressure up.
Yeah. I mean, Light of Heaven, getting close to his Lincoln Sphere. Here comes a jump in. Blue Banana once again in trouble. Ice Path and 1 more last hit. We'll do the trick. Weaver actually earning the last hit there. Only about 500 off now from his Lincoln Sphere, and that'll let him transition into damage items if he wants. They don't manage to secure the last hit on that tower. Here's Ice Path, catches Poss. He's still Moonlight Shadowed, and they don't have vision. There's the surge for Goblack. If you're Goblack, how do you feel very good when you get surged? I feel like you're just like, are you guys sending me in to die again?
I feel like you have to expect that you're getting sent in to die. What else could you really be doing?
Right.
It feels like that's Goblack's job right now anyways, with how this game's been going. They're not really feeling that far behind, but most of his job has been to die thus far. It feels like anytime there was an initiation or a smoke gank or anything that came out from uebelst,
yeah,
Goblack just sort of ran into it. It's like, alright, I'm here, I'm gonna block you with my disruption. And it's worked thus far. He's died a lot of times, but he has saved his teammates multiple times as well.
Yeah, 14 times. Interesting. Midas, definitely a rare pickup for Mirana. Definitely something that you build either when you're, I guess, really ahead and feeling super confident that you'll make it, or in this case, when RMN feels very behind and feels that it's the only way for him to try to catch up on levels and farm. He is level 9, so he's doing better than the supports of VirtusPro, but not as well as Poss, and certainly not as well as this clump of core heroes with Exist, Blue Banana, Resolution, Light of Heaven, and G. And it looks like VP just going to push ahead to the Tier 2 bot. Light of Heaven should be able to pick up his Lincolns very soon, especially if they manage to score the last hit on this tower. And I don't know that uebelst right now can actually perform a successful tower defense. Although, who knows with Black Hole? We still haven't actually seen a Black Hole cast this game, and when one comes down, I guess that could have a pretty big impact.
Yeah, I think Black Hole is always the sort of spell where you're like, what's going to happen when this gets cast? Sometimes you're going to airball it, and people are going to shout PGG, and you're going to be embarrassed. But sometimes you're going to 5-man on Black Hole and win the game on the back of it. So it's a very high risk, high reward spell, certainly. We'll have to see what it ends up going for. But this is kind of what I was worried about with a VP. If they're starting to put, they see this Midas on Mirana, they know Mirana has 0 impact right now. Just absolutely nothing, as long as they don't get surprise arrowed.
Right.
So they can just lay this pressure on. They know that there are several heroes with the Midas on the Prophet as well. They can not really do anything about it right now. And VP have a lot of pushing potential with just this Darkseer because he does have that early mech. He even has a Blink Dagger picked up.
Yeah, I really like this Blink Dagger for Resolution. It'll let him have excellent positioning. He can really disrupt those black holes if they're not pinpoint perfect and they don't land on him. He has more mobility than almost anybody on uebelst besides, of course, Puck, who has a Blink Dagger as well. So, Exist so far has had a huge game. He's been very, very on point. But I almost feel like so much is riding on his shoulders. Like, he almost has to do better and better and better just to keep uebelst even with where VP are going. So it is still a delicate situation. They definitely need to grind out for a while to get RMN some more farm, to get Blue Banana. The 3 deaths are starting to really cost him. Like, the time that he's not spending farming. Even with that, he's still tied for the highest level on the map, but they would really want this Nature's Prophet to be spearheading a lot of split pushing and pressure, and every time he tries to split push, he just kind of gets caught out. Is there something that he could be doing to avoid that, or is that just a byproduct of being against Storm Spirit Weaver?
Yeah, I think Storm in particular is just so effective against Nature's Prophet. Until Prophet gets like a Scythe or an Orchid to try and counteract the Storm's power, he's just going to continue diving on him, and the initiation range is so large that it's hard to really get away as the Prophet. He does have that Shadow Blade picked up now, so that's certainly something, but with the dust on Storm, it's not going to work out well for Furion if he gets caught out more times, and I think it's likely to happen.
Yeah. The game is paused. What's happening is that Exist apparently has very high ping, which is unfortunate, and we're getting a little bit of, well, I guess the less said about what's going on in alt chat, the better. But Exist is lagging, and uebelst, if they can afford to have any player on their team lag, it's probably not the 5-0-3 the 5-0-3 Puck. That's probably not who you can have lag and still feel comfortable at going ahead with your game. So hopefully they'll be able to get Exist involved. Well, I don't know. Let's take a look, shall we? His ping looks fine. Unfortunately, our stats guy's ping looks really bad. I feel really bad for Nahaz. He has 1,347 ping.
That seems good.
That seems pretty
if only
bleak.
it were 10 less.
If only it were 10 less. That's an excellent point. But yeah, it looks like they're good to go. Exist maybe got control of his lag situation. He had to leave their voice chat, so hopefully they've figured out an alternative voice chatting solution, or he's managed to get back into TeamSpeak, because that would also be a big problem if Puck is not able to communicate with the rest of your team. Here comes the song. The setup is here. RMN curling around. He's going to throw the Secret Arrow at a very odd angle. Will it actually hit Light of Heaven? It does! Perfect timing! The Weaver in a tremendous amount of trouble. He gets pops, but there's the Vac into Wall, into Macropyre, into Ice Path. The black hole hits nothing, and G is ready to mop up, even with the perfect Weaver kill. Lots of deaths already. Blue Banana, Dueling God, RMN throws an arrow into nowhere. Exist manages to kill 2 buybacks already. What a bloody, bloody fight that was, and Goblak and Resolution walking away from it. Resolution already TPing to the top. Goblak walking the old-fashioned way, and very nice initiation from uebelst. Really excellent first arrow from RMN. The second one, not so much, but I still feel like that fight favored VP in the end.
Yeah, VP, they came out ahead only because uebelst used several buybacks, and they really didn't get that much out of it. The buybacks ended up securing them a couple kills that otherwise VP would have gotten away clean and sort of try and salvage the fight. But when you're using the buybacks just to sort of go even on the fight, you're still coming out behind. And that's really the problem for uebelst right now. They're not coming out ahead in much of anything at this point.
Sure.
And there was also the black hole, like I talked about. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's real bad.
Yeah, he was really caught between a rock and a hard place in some respect, where he wanted to hit both Storm Spirit, who was zipping forward, and the supports in the backcourt. And Poss, he ended up kind of, splitting the difference, splitting the wickets, and he didn't catch anything. Light of Heaven in a little bit of trouble again. There goes the Nature's Prophet ultimate. I don't think it did quite enough damage. Yeah, Light of Heaven's going to walk away from this no problem. He has his Lincoln Sphere if he wants it, just has to buy up that recipe. And Exist, that's basically the first gank attempt he's walked away from without a kill from it. And, of course, he cost himself a lot of money by having to buy back as well, as did Nature's Prophet. And so Again, if we look at the graphs, it seems very even, but you have to understand that uebelst, there's a tax being imposed on them by the fact that they spent gold to buy back. Light of Heaven in trouble again. There's the Dream Coil this time, and Blue Banana is actually here to do a bit of auto attack as well. So they pick off Weaver, even as Storm Spirit finds a kill on Naga Siren. Not a trade that, if you're VP, you like very much. There's an arrow on NS. I don't think they can follow this up necessarily. It would have to be a very bold jump forward by RMN, which would not be smart, given that Resolution is here. So, yeah, I mean, Light of Heaven, it seemed like he was way ahead on farm. There's an Ice Path. There's the Disruption. RMN takes the Soul Catch as well. Even the ultimate comes from Resolution, and that may have been a little bold. Maybe they can secure the Tier 1 tower with this at least, but yeah, Light of Heaven really slowed himself down with those couple of deaths in those last 2 fights. So G, he's got Orchid Malevolence. He's looping around the back. Can he find another kill? If he can really prey on these supports, better yet, if he can prey on Mirana or Nature's Prophet, the Storm Spirit can just win the game. Here it comes. Electric Lasso hasn't used Orchid yet. There it comes. One more auto attack will do it. He's out of mana, though. There's the Malefice. A couple more hits. Tower hitting him as well. Nice search from Resolution, but the Nature's Prophet ultimate finds the kill there. Missed Ice Path only hits Alex. There's actually a song coming up. NS and Goblak are both low. What can they do about these supports? Well, Exist can roll in. There's the Waning Rift. A kill already for him. Goblak is ensnared. Alex will use his images. He actually will have Riptide available. There's the Purge. Alex in a bit of trouble. Meanwhile, Exist trying to pick off Goblak. Light of Heaven. He'll pick up that kill. Not a great trade so far. Goblak is down. Light of Heaven. He uses Time Lapse. Exist. Will he chase? Dream Coil misses! They don't have the detection to actually spot him out, so they miss the Dream Coil. Light of Heaven walks away. But still, I feel like that was pretty good for uebelst, especially the pick off on G.
Yeah, it went very well for them. I wonder if Exist doesn't know that interaction with Dream Coil, that it doesn't hit invisible targets unless you have reveal.
I think maybe he thought that the Shikuchi would actually end. Because if he times it perfectly and the Shikuchi ends, then he completely catches Light of Heaven out. I'm not sure.
That's true. I guess that could have been the case. But regardless, Light of Heaven is able to get away. And
right.
Yeah, it definitely went well for uebelst, though. And that was kind of off the back of Light of Heaven getting killed at first, and then G went in, kind of spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah.
It's definitely the kind of fight that uebelst want to be able to take, the scrappy fight, because they are kind of behind.
Sure, absolutely.
Where they're able to just get some additional kills and get some gold out of it that way.
For sure, and I think RMN participated in some of those kills, which, again, is critical. Even with Midas, this Mirana is sitting on, you know, Ring of Basilius and Power Treads, and a little bit of attack speed from the Midas. Oh, no, and he's going to get caught out. There's the Orchid. There's the Electric Lasso. Resolution's here. Easy kill on RMN. This Mirana's still contributing almost nothing, but Goblak in a bit of trouble. They're fighting under the tower. There's the Macropyre for Alex. He's being chased. Running around the back is Resolution. Alex in even more trouble. I think we can write this Naga Siren off at this point. And even G zips his way out of the fight. Malefice wasn't enough to hold Storm Spirit down. They get the tower deny, but 2 kills equalizes for VP, and yeah, Kanaz, I mean, you highlighted the Mirana, and his net worth is just so bad. It's 2k behind where Poss is. Is there any way? I mean, you mentioned that they might just have to write the Mirana off. I guess it's just Puck and Nature's Prophet.
Yeah, I think Mirana is just never going to be really a factor in this game, even with that Midas pickup. The Midas was trying to get her back in the game, but it sort of just served as a gold sink at this point. She's not been able to really pick up any items beyond it, just picking up treads at this point, and now she has this item that doesn't really do that much for her.
Sure.
She's not farming. It's right. I don't know if they're ever going to be able to get anything of any relevance on her unless this game goes to like 60 minutes. And if it does, I'd be pretty surprised.
Right. A Roche picked up for VP in the meantime. They put it on Storm Spirit. Of course, Storm Spirit, a fantastic Aegis carrier, having another. He doesn't just get another health pool from it, he also gets another mana pool, and that's vastly more useful for Storm Spirit than it is for a lot of other heroes. G had a very quick Orchid Malevolence here. That is generally a sign that you're winning the game. You can see that his win rates in general when you get a fast Orchid are very good, and the impact of this Orchid has already been felt. It's led to a couple Mirana kills. He's still hunting. Nice little speculative arrow from RMN there. Doesn't quite catch him. If he had seen that hit G, they'd be like, seems like somebody stealthed over there. They find Alex. There's the Orchid. Damage getting thrown out. A nice Moonlight Shadow attempt, but it's not enough. The fade time a little bit too long. Meanwhile, NS does get caught out. He gets picked off very, very quickly. Blue Banana, do they have an Orchid somewhere? No, it was just a regular silence from the Puck Waning Rift. So a trade of a support for a support, but Puck right now is just not snowballing quite as hard as I feel G has the potential to, especially with this Aegis. So even though Exist is 8-1-7, this is still a very difficult situation for uebelst. especially because of the distance between where Weaver is at on the one hand and where Mirana is at on the other. Basically, just one guy has a full Lincoln's and 2k gold, one guy has a Midas and 1k gold. So, uebelst, they may just have to slow it down even further, keep trying to make whatever they can happen with the Nature's Prophet. Blue Banana's farming pretty hard. I mean, he's trying to go for the Scythe of Vice. Once they get the 2 Scythes of Vice up for the Puck and the Nature's Prophet, is that enough that they're not as disfavored for 5-mans?
Yeah, I think once they get those key items up, they could certainly try and take the 5-mans a little bit more effectively, particularly since they'll have a little bit better of a way of trying to lock down Light of Heaven. It's not very easy right now. They have some spells like the Waning Rift from the Puck to try and set up, but I think once they get those sides, it's going to be much, much easier. And also, getting the Storm Spirit done is obviously a big deal. He's been able to move around in the fights quite a bit. Sometimes we've seen G overextend a little bit and blow his mana pool when maybe he shouldn't have. But for the most part, he is dealing a lot of damage in these fights, so any lockdown they can obtain for him is going to be very, very beneficial.
Absolutely. So, VirtusPro, they're going to try to get in before that lockdown is available. I think definitely they don't want these critical items for uebelst to come up and try to take them back in. So they're going to pressure. You can see that the entire team is going onto this tower. There's an arrow thrown out. Won't hit on anybody. Pressure being placed by the Weaver. He has a decent health pool of 1400. Of course, there's time-lapse available also. Building towards Manta style if he wants it with this Yasha. That'll give them even more push pressure. And of course, the ability to dodge or remove debuffs, some of which are very, very consequential, like Waning Rift. There's the disruption. Arrow to throw out. Light of Heaven is stunned up, but G trying to turn it around. Moonlight Shadow will protect exist. There actually is the Song of the Siren in the back court. Can they pick up G? That's the question. It looks like they're not confident that they can. RMN, he was way far forward, manages to leap back towards safety, but that's a free tower. Light of Heaven, will he be pressured? Exist chooses not to jump in on it. uebelst still playing pretty conservatively. They know it's not going to be easy to take a fight. They end up... Oh, actually, Arrow will interrupt Light of Heaven's TP out, and all of a sudden they're very committed to this. Exist jumps in, Waning Rift, Light of Heaven on the ground. Here comes G to turn it around. Orchid on RMN. He'll still survive the Orchid damage so far. Exist, meanwhile, is very, very deep. He's just going to try to TP out with a Macro Pyre on him, and he manages to do so. G, he takes a Malefice. This is a horrible fight for VirtusPro. G is on the ground. He uses his Aegis. He can probably still make it out. Goblak, he's still up. Their Black Hole. They use the Black Hole. Do they have enough time? It looks like they do. Storm Spirit and Weaver taken down in exchange for basically a tower and the Aegis gone. uebelst, they pull it together.
Yeah, it was a good fight for them and just really an awkward fight from VP. There was not a ton of reason for Light of Heaven to teleport out there in kind of no man's land.
Yeah, that was an incredibly unsafe TP with a Mirana on the field.
Yep, and he immediately got punished for it, and it ended up leading to that big fight for uebelst, getting the Aegis down on the Storm as well as killing him again, even though they...
Here's the leap from RMN, point blank arrow. Resolution is out of it, but there's the Waning Rift to finish him off. RMN was sheeped. I mean, we talked about this Darkseer's farm. He's got the sheep, the mech, the blink, and 1,000 gold on top of it, but they managed to find a kill that's 10, 1, and 7 for Exist. He's really spearheading his team, and Nature's Prophet's net worth just hit the 1 spot. So, I guess maybe they are stable, even using Mirana as an arrow bot, or do you think this is just like, as soon as VP stops making mistakes, they'll be able to take it?
It's kind of hard to say. VP were in a pretty commanding position, I think, for quite some time, but with these mistakes starting to pile up, it's going to get harder and harder for them to actually win these team fights, just because of the spells that are really on the side of uebelst. Naga Sleep is just such a good ability for setting things up, and if they ever get enough heroes caught in a cluster, that Black Hole can just lead to a completely one team fight on the back of that only.
uebelst using Moonlight Shadow as kind of a smoke effect, but they won't actually find anybody. VP has completely colonized their jungle. 2 wards, a sentry over here. Light of Heaven feels completely free to farm it up. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were we saying?
Oh, no, nothing big.
Oh, Blue Banana actually Shadow Blades right into Goblak and G, but they've spotted him out. He's in a lot of trouble. There's the Purge from Goblak, Soul Catcher as well. Nice Ice Path from NS, and G will mop this up. Blue Banana, that was a really unsafe play, and of course G has the gems, so they catch him out. That's G a little bit closer to his BKB. Not a death that they wanted. They're highest net worth by some margin. You can see that he knows that RMN isn't dealing the auto attack damage, so he's actually gone. I mean, this Nature's Prophet has a Chrysalis already, but it's a Chrysalis that they can't use. And here they go, attempting to flee out of the fight. Alex actually even using a Song of the Siren, and that's a costly one. He is level 11, so it's 120 seconds rather than 180. But VP can now push in confidence that there's no song threat. Do they need that song, or were they safe without it?
I don't think they really needed the song.
RMN picked off by G again. The power of the Storm Spirit with the fast Orchid. Meanwhile, in the middle, Exist trying to make something happen, but he's Scythe Device. It looks like Goblak might be safe. Nice vacuum into a wall, into a Macropyre. Exist, Alex, both trapped in. The Naga already on the ground. Exist is silenced just before he can do anything. 4 down for uebelst, and it all falls apart in that moment. VP really catching them out positioning-wise, and they're going to, I think, at least put some pressure on the high ground. Can they end it here, or can uebelst stabilize with some... They don't really have buybacks.
It's going to be kind of hard for uebelst to really defend their base here. They have another 50 seconds on the Puck, and Puck does not have buyback. And I think Puck is so core to them being able to win a fight. I don't know what they're going to be able to do. This might just be VP on the back of several pickoffs in a chain, which really shouldn't happen.
Yeah, Puck had his... He has his Scythe of Vice, but that actually took him off the buyback that would have been so critical here. So even if VP don't take the entire game, they do manage to bring down an entire set of racks. And I mentioned this before, but this is a pretty important game for VP. If they want to make the Starlighter playoffs, they basically can't drop another game. 5 losses is, even that's borderline, so you need to not lose. And you especially can't afford to lose to the team that's 0-7, because certainly won't help you for any situation like tiebreakers. So uebelst, they've been putting up a good fight so far, but that puts them down a lot. They lose a set of racks. Resolution's still farming extremely well. He's got almost a BKB for this Dark Seer. And Light of Heaven, no slouch either. He has a full Manta style. uebelst, they're now very far on the back foot. What do they do to pull it together? Is it time to 5-push, or just time to really just split push even harder with Nature's Prophet?
I don't know if they could hope to just split push it out at this point with how far behind they've really fallen, losing that lane in the mid, and the fact that Storm Spirit is so effective at ganking this Nature's Prophet right now. I just don't know if that's going to be ever their strategy, but getting caught out is
Enigma.
not the strat.
Yeah, this time it's Enigma. G, he's 10-5-7. He's taking control. BKB finally finished for RMN, but even that just reduces the pressure that Storm Spirit is putting on you. Light of Heaven is going to be scary. He has Manta being delivered to him at this moment. NS and Goblak, meanwhile, amassing their Force Staffs. Goblak, despite his start, he was 0-5 at like 5 minutes. He's 1-6 at 33, and that's given him space to get 2k gold on top of a Force Staff. Suddenly this Shadow Demon isn't even as easy to kill as it used to be. And uebelst, they find themselves on their high ground. They know they can't really leave because of the threat of G, the omnipresent threat of that Storm Spirit just jumping onto them. And VP, they want to take it out. Light of Heaven, sitting on the high ground, doing a little bit of damage to the tower. We'll see if he decides to use Manta Style. He's probably going to wait to get Waning Rifted before he uses something like that. He has the illusions from the Disruption. It was a defensive one, just gives them the ability to harass this tower essentially for free. Roshan status, up in a few seconds. Now that VP have put uebelst onto their high ground, there's, I guess, not that much way that uebelst can seek to contest that.
Yeah, they're just way on the back foot now, and they can't keep getting picked off in their own jungle. That's what led to them losing the mid racks. And getting these pickoffs very, very easily for VP is the best way to kind of make sure that you have no chance of even Alex now in the mid lane.
Speaking of pickoffs, Alex in a bit of trouble. Ice Path just short. He will just be pushed back onto the high ground. Doesn't actually manage to die, so he has Song available. He's going to want to save that for a setup. If he just uses it to escape, VP will just immediately respond by putting layering pressure on. So has to be very cautious about using that Song of the Siren. And they also, I guess, need buybacks, because right now all the buybacks are on VP's side.
Yeah, we saw those not having buybacks really, really hurt them in that last fight. If they just had a buyback on Puck, I think they could have probably defended their middle or lane, but
maybe
not having buybacks on anyone really made so that there was no chance of a defense at all. They need to get those up because VP, with this Aegis, which they really can't contest, are going to try and lay pressure on. They know they have the advantage, and they're going to want to try and close this game out.
Ooh, I guess they're still getting some pause. I mean, it's... I guess they're still getting some lag. Sorry about that. Well, we'll hopefully see if they are able to get that under control. Unfortunately, again, if Exist is lagging, basically most of their team's capacity to actually win fights is lagging. So if you're in uebelst position, you really don't have much choice but to pause here, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and VP in particular are probably not particularly pleased about this because they just had that issue. But it happens. This is kind of what we've come to expect. Maybe we shouldn't expect it, but we do.
So uebelst certainly won't be able to contest Roshan. How do they, like, what's your itinerary as uebelst to defend a high ground push after VP adds another Aegis onto either Storm or Weaver? Like, what's your plan?
I think it's important to see who that Aegis is on first. If it's on Storm, I think it's going to be pretty difficult for them to win a fight just because he can be so aggressive with his positioning and trying to initiate the fight that way. Some Weaver, I think it might be a little bit easier, that they can just kind of commit to trying to set up the big song into Black Hole, because they really just need a big team fight at this point.
Right. It is Storm, though, so VP certainly didn't want to make it any easier than they needed to. They probably had some of the same logic that you just applied, and that'll be VirtusPro with an Aegis onto Storm Spirit, and one of the bigger Darkseers we've recently seen. No Midas, 564 gold per minute. I think Nahaz mentioned Darkseers only ended games with 500 gold per minute or better 5 times. So, and one of those times had a Midas. And I know that Bone7 from Kaipi has also been developing the Midas Darkseer strat, and even he doesn't typically get the amount of farm that Resolution has here. Here's the Song of the Siren. This is probably uebelst's one big shot at taking this game back into control. Exist, they want to start on Resolution. The arrow misses. He uses BKB. There's the vacuum. There's the macro pyre. There's a nice black hole from Pos, but so much is on the table for VP here. They have every ult. Pos will be brought down. Exist will be brought down. Blue Banana is down, and G chases RMN into the fountain. Oh my god. It's an utter slaughter in exchange for just an Aegis, and oh my god, the execution was just a bit off for uebelst. They really wanted that arrow to land on Resolution and take out the Darkseer, and you could see exactly why, since once Resolution used the BKB, threw down that vacuum, it was hard to watch, honestly, Kanaz. Oh my god.
Yeah, once that arrow missed, I think game was pretty much sealed with that not hitting. VP just, we knew they were going to be stronger in the fight. If that arrow lands, they could potentially set up a pretty big fight if they could burst him down quickly, but with it not landing, he's able to just BKB, like you said. And that black hole just doesn't do that much when no one on their team really does the right-click damage. We had the Crystallis on Nature's Prophet, but again, Mirana had nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, alright, folks, so that was game 2 of 3. We've had pretty exciting games, honestly. Both games were the highest of all time on Darkseer. Resolution, I mean, this Darkseer really was incredibly consequential. 7-1-10, the final record, with just a rogues gallery of useful items. And in the end, VP, they stabilize. Again, they need to win. They cannot be losing games, and so that was a critical victory for them, getting on the path to trying to make it into the playoffs of StarLadder Season 7. Don't go away, folks. Next game coming up in just a second. It will be Rock's Kiss against Kaipi. Another exciting one, hopefully. And all of us will be joining you here at Shiver Gaming. Shiver is away. She'll be back on Sunday, I believe. Thanks for watching, and we'll head up into the next game in just a moment.